Kia ora, talofa namaste, haere mai, and welcome to the Niche Cache. This is our big old podcast coming at you on a Tuesday, and today we have Ford Trophy cricket currently being played, so we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll update some domestic cricket matters in a jiffy. Also need to talk through some A-League football, some New Zealand Warriors stuff going on. Obviously had the Māori versus Indigenous All-Stars game on the weekend, and games, plural. Shout out to all the touch players as well. And I have to say, I think the Māori team, I prefer not to say All-Stars because why do we need All-Stars? Why can't we just play the Māoris versus the Indigenous and just keep it like that? Because that's the best thing about the game, is the celebration of cultures and just putting the Māoris against the Indigenous teams, like just those two teams playing against each other is honka-dory. I don't really care about whether it's All-Stars or no All-Stars. The Māori men especially, they consistently do the best haka at making you feel like you're way back in the day and you're coming up against a haka. They've got the horns department. Obviously, I don't think it's a horn. It's the shells and stuff like that. But they've got the musical factor, the choreography, the way everything is set up. So like you can't see Britain Nakora until he steps through the players and he starts to do his growl, which sounds so freaky that it would be amazing to see way back in the day. The way the performers kind of split, so you're left with like James Fish-Harris and Nickel Clockstar, and then you got Keanu Kinney behind them. Like everything about the way the Māori haka is, obviously the haka is Māori, so just to differentiate it from the New Zealand Kiwis haka or the All Blacks haka or the Blackcaps haka or whatever haka we're talking about here. Obviously the Blackcaps don't do a haka. Everything about the Māori...
Well, when they win the T20 World Cup, we'll see.
Yeah, we might get Finel and Pukana. Everything about the Māori All-Stars haka is the best. It's so performative. The way it's all designed just makes you feel like you're right there. Aside from Sky Sport once again putting cameramen on the floor between the two teams. Like Nico Hines walked past one of them and he was like looking down at him like, are you okay? I'm going to walk all over you. And for those who haven't been watching very often, Sky Sports always do this. And they always get trampled on. And it's amazing that they have not learned their lesson not to put cameramen between the two teams doing a haka, because it's the same thing when it's Tonga versus Samoa in New Zealand. It's the same thing when it's the Kiwis versus Samoa and Tonga in New Zealand. For some reason, Sky Sports just loves the grasshopper angle. And all it does is gives us like a grasshopper's perspective as the cameraman's in danger, as the players are in danger. And for some reason, it's the New Zealand broadcaster that always does this. Australia doesn't do it. European nations don't even come close to doing it when it's the All Blacks playing France or something. Somehow New Zealand's broadcaster is the worst at broadcasting haka. I don't know how it's happened, but it's happened. And I'll keep saying it every single time Sky Sport decide to put cameramen and their offsider, because they need their little cabler man as well behind them. So you got two people standing in the middle of haka. It is absolutely crazy, but the Māori All-Stars haka is the best. And it makes you feel like you're right there, but it also, the way they do their haka is the closest thing we have to like what it would be like to come up against that situation way back in the day before all the half Pākehā, half Palangis came on board and decided to steal everything. Big respect to my ancestors. You got any Māori haka thoughts?
I mean, I agree they do the best one. I was, enthralled watching that one on the weekend. And I also second the idea that it's not just that it's not just that it's physically silly to have people standing in between them with the cameras and the cords and everything. It's also just it's not the best angle to watch it
No.
from. Who wants to see it from like with the grass poking up, and what's the point of that? I'll tell you who films it really well is when the All Blacks go and play in Britain, and they get like a lot of over the top shots, and sometimes you get the old spider cam if it's at a certain, at certain stadiums where you can like swivel in front, then you can get a bit of that. But even then, like that's the over top looking down angle is just so much more cinematic, so much more. You get like the scope, the size of it. It's just it's far better viewing than I just. It's like it's silly. It's silly to stand in front of the thing, but it's also just it's not a good shot. I don't want to see it from this angle. It feels too small and like I don't know. You just don't feel like you're seeing the whole thing.
Yeah, big up to Britain, but France do the best job at presenting haka, I think, in the whole wide world. So
true. Yeah, I said Britain because I was just thinking Northern Hemisphere tours, but of course they go to France.
Just, I mean,
you're right.
England and Britain is better than New Zealand, so fair play. But the fact that France have done the best job at broadcasting haka is embarrassing to Sky Sport. Like, it is disgusting for Sky Sport that they are so bad at broadcasting haka. And it's like, I'm sure at some point Sky Sport's been like, okay, we've got an agreement from both teams. They won't walk forward. They won't go past the 40-meter line. So we're going to set up all our equipment. We're going to set up all our cameras in that space between the two teams because they've told us they're not going to go forward. That is exactly the same as like football teams, A-League is what we talk about, writing their formation down. Writing their team list down, right? Like, okay, you've told us you're playing in a 3-5-7, so you got to be playing in a 3-5-7. That's never going to be the case. It's the same, and I've thought about this one as well, the cricket batting lineup. Because people, okay, so, in our batting lineup, Rachin Ravindra is due to come in at number 4, but he's actually not in yet. What's happening? Well, that's the batting lineup they gave you before the toss, and there is no obligation for them to present that same batting lineup. That's just what they wrote down. Those are the same things where it's like, I think some of the broadcasters think, because you told us that's going to be the case, especially when you're getting into your Samoas, your Tongas, and your New Zealand. The All Blacks, let's be honest, their haka is pretty tame. They don't do anything that we see with rugby league, haka and war dances for the other nations, which is probably the half Pākehā, half Palangi side coming out of the All Blacks. But I have never seen Samoa not walk forward. I've never seen it. They're always going to do it. So they're always walking past.
Part of the thing, yeah.
Exactly. I've never seen Tonga stop before the cameras. And I've never seen the Kiwis be like, oh no, there's cameras there. Oh, we're not going to stop there. I have seen the Kiwis, depending on whether it's a home game and away game, they may say, this is our line, because the Kiwis will stop before halfway. Like James Fisher, Harris, Joseph Tapine, they'll kind of draw a line on the turf and say, this is our line, we're not going over it, you can't come past it. But that line might be before halfway. But the fact that Sky Sport, for some reason, think that these teams, men, women, all sorts of cultures, are not going to move forward because they've got some camera men, camera people, and camera equipment and microphones there is ridiculous. Because I've never seen it happen.
Well, it's the same as at any point of the game, right? How many times do you see like a photographer or a cameraman or something getting close to the corner flag when a player's like diving? Like every once or twice a season that'll happen in the NRL where like someone will slide in, trying to score a try, and then take out a cameraman or something like that. Actually, worse for this is like basketball, where they have all the people sitting right there courtside as if no player is ever going to have to, run out of bounds trying to chase a ball. The player's job is not to stop and protect the camera person in that situation. The camera person's job is to not get in the way of the player, because that's what everyone is there to see. That's the sport that people have paid to view. It's not really any different beforehand or during the, it's this is the event, and if you get in the way of them, you're the one that's in the way. They're not getting in the way of you. They're not trampling on you. You're the one who's invading their space.
Those are good examples, but they're all like off the field. So the haka stuff, you're in the field of play.
Yeah, just because the play hasn't started yet. I mean, it kind of has. If they're doing the haka, that's part of what people are there to see.
But for some reason, they think that like this is going to be the time where it's all going to work, and our camera person isn't going to get trampled on and endanger the athletes, because you could roll an ankle, you could bust a knee, you could do anything by just bumping into the person who's literally lying on the ground in front of you. The two people who are lying on the ground in front of you. It's so crazy. Sky Sports, you're kind of embarrassing. Melie Kerr is not embarrassing. Melie Kerr is an absolute champion. And we are in the Melie Kerr era generally, I think. She is now the White Ferns captain. And this is the Melie Kerr era because the artist formerly known as Melie Kerr is now officially Melie Kerr. Now, of course, she was being listed as Melie Kerr before. And it was like, okay, I get it. But it also seems like something that's for the cool kids to say. Like that's something that old sumo wrestler commentator would say. Because he's all about the nicknames. He's all about being best friends with the players. So he's like, oh, Melie Kerr, Melie Kerr, Melie Kerr, Melie Kerr. It's like, okay, we're never part of the cool crew, so that's what that is. But also like, I'm not your friend. I'm just going to call you Amelia. So I did find it a bit weird, but it's like if James Fisher Harris just started going like, no, they call me Jay. Well, so like, I've got to call you Jay as well. What's the old commentator's name? Costigan. He's got to call you Jay as well. James Costigan. I can't remember his name. Not Neville Costigan. I think he was the player. So like, okay, yep, cool. Your name's Melie. Your government's name's Melie Kerr. I'm going to just keep calling you Melie Kerr because I'm not really part of the cool crew. Until you become White Ferns captain, and every single time your name is written, it's Melie Kerr in the official White Ferns captaincy announcement. So this is an official niche case announcement that the artist formerly known as Melie Kerr, and I even went further and I'd say A Kerr, J Kerr, because we got Jess Kerr, we got Melie Kerr. So I would type it out A Kerr and J Kerr. Now I'm going to have to type it out M Kerr, J Kerr. Because if the official White Ferns captaincy announcement is all about Melie Kerr, I'm going to play ball with that. I'm all good with that. And so we now enter the Melie Kerr era. To be honest, I'm kind of just thinking it's the Kerr era. Because Jess Kerr is, to me, she's going to be just as vital, important, influential in this era as her younger sister. And I think everything you see with Melie Kerr is a product of her being... she's Jess Kerr's younger sister, right? It's Jess Kerr's influence.
Sister. No, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Jess Kerr's influence is there. So just for me to try and explain the Kerr era, that's a factor. But now we're in the Melie Kerr era of the White Ferns. And Not only is that official now that we're in the Melie Kerr era, and I actually think this is cool for like the law of niche cage sports, where everything to this moment for us was Melie Kerr. So that's when she was the young phenom. She grows into the White Ferns' best player. Now
Gandalf the Grey.
Yep, but it doesn't really apply, but it's the same concept. Now she is
Gandalf the Grey, now she's Gandalf the White.
Yep. Now she's a Melie Kerr, and she is the captain of the White Ferns. She is the leader of women's cricket in New Zealand. She is already our best player ever. I think she has the chance to be our best captain ever. And I think this is what I'm excited about, is this could be the best era of White Ferns cricket ever. That's the Melie Kerr era. And I get the same leadership feeling about Melie Kerr as I get with James Fisher-Harris. We can adopt any Māori word we want, the wairoa, the mana, all this stuff. Leadership, Melie Kerr, James Fisher-Harris, to me, they're top of the pops. And funnily enough, Melie Kerr specifically dropped some te reo in the announcement. And that sparked another thought, like, if you're worried about the future of Māori people in Aotearoa, I wouldn't necessarily worry, because all our sporting leaders are Māori. And Melie Kerr might not be Māori, but she has as a half Pākehā, half Palangi, if she's not Māori, she has consistently put Māori culture, Māori values at the forefront of her presence in the White Ferns. So our sporting leaders are either Māori, Polynesian, or with a great respect of Māori culture in the land of Aotearoa. Melie Kerr didn't need to drop some te reo in the announcement, but she did, to describe her leadership style. And I am very excited about how the Melie Kerr era looks for the White Ferns, not only because of her leadership, not only because of her status as a cricketer, but also because we're entering a phase where the White Ferns are going to have the most talent they've ever had, the most resources they've ever had, the most depth they've ever had, the most money they've ever had, the most opportunities they've ever had. All that's coming together now. And I think Melie Kerr's already an Aotearoa sporting legend, and that's just going to grow into this tremendous leadership avenue for her, which I reckon is going to bring out the best for all the White Ferns and women's cricket in Aotearoa.
Yeah, normally they go with the nickname to start, and then you sort of shed the nickname later on in your career as you sort of try to put out a more, I don't know, a more mature perspective of yourself. I like it the other way around from Melie Kerr, of being like, I was a Melie, although she's always kind of been Melie in the thing, but just to hammer that home and through the more official channels, to go from Amelia to Melie at a point where you take over a great responsibility. It's sort of like I'm comfortable with this responsibility, you know?
A transition from Amelia to Melie is us. That's not her. It was in the but the announcement and all the graphics and all that. Yeah, but New Zealand cricket always, like, if Melie Kerr says, I want to be known as Melie, New Zealand cricket were doing it 2 years ago. But like me trying to be like Aote out of the cool crowd, I was like, let's just keep rocking with Amelia. Let's keep rocking with A. Kerr. Kind of because that's the proper thing to do. But the era for niche cage sports law, that's all about us. We are moving from Amelia Kerr to Melie Kerr. Because Melie Kerr has made it very clear she wanted to be called Melie Kerr a few years ago.
Yeah, well, she has been the whole time through, but there is a difference in putting that out in like in a captaincy announcement. That is a significant bit of paperwork going on there. But yeah, I see where you're coming from. But like, I guess I don't know, because the thing I think about when I saw that is like, yes, that was the obvious move. Like, she is arguably the best batter and the best bowler and the best player. She's the obvious option to be your next captain. The risk is that like they've had previous obvious options to be the next captain, and that hasn't always seemed to either bring out the best in the team around them or to like bring out the best in those players. Like I think of the Sophie Devine era is the obvious one of that. Where a little bit gloomy there for a while. Um, Amelia Kerr has like
Melie Kerr.
slash Melie Kerr. Sorry,
Yeah.
I got a bit too formal there for a second. I went from Jimmy Neesham to James Neesham.
Well, are you the police or something, or what's going on?
Yeah, it's just license and registration, please. Um, I I don't know. Like she did have a mental health break for a little bit a few years ago, and that sort of felt like that's a young player coming to grips with having to be in this kind of leadership role, have this much responsibility within the team, even before she was captain. But like I've heard her talk in a lot of interviews, a lot of extended interviews and stuff since then. Obviously, she gets interviewed a lot because she's a key player. That is clearly an aspect of not just her game, but it affects her game, obviously, but just of herself that she works on a lot. And I think she is probably as well prepared to be White Ferns captain as kind of anyone has. And she's arguably the first captain they would have had on a permanent basis who's like, wasn't an amateur player coming up or an amateur player who became a professional player, but has been like legitimately a professional cricketer, living that lifestyle since she was what, 16, arguably 14 if you're counting domestic cricket,
Yeah, well, you're being a bit generous with the professional stuff. Like it's
yeah, I know. Yeah. The professional
semi-pro.
The inclination of professionalism, the sort of it might not be financially as professionally as it should, but it is like the lifestyle of it is there. And yeah, from that perspective, there's also just the fact that everyone loves her in that team and everyone respects her again. Like that, she is maybe the best prepared captain they could have had. And while it is, yes, hiring just like or promoting the best player to be there in that role as they've done before, she's also the best captain. Like she's the best option as a captain, whether she is the best player or not, independently of those things. So yeah, all full steam ahead for the Melie Kerr era.
Her journey to this captaincy, to me, reinforces how good a leader she is. Like the awareness, the learning, the growth,
yeah,
and building towards this moment it highlights the leader that she is. And she will be playing for Wellington, I imagine, in the HBJ Shield final this Saturday versus Northern Districts. She returned to the Wellington team this weekend against Auckland and got busy with 128 runs with a great strike rate. So that's what she did most recently for Wellington. And she dabbled in a bit of Super Smash, I think, as well. Yes, so she had 206 runs, average of 103, strike rate of 137, 4 wickets at 13 in the Super Smash. So whenever she's played domestic cricket this summer, she has been dominant. She did hit that century with Jess Kerr in the Super Smash, and she must have 2 centuries in like 4 games of domestic cricket this summer. So that's what Melie Kerr does. And I'll just expand on the little quick HBJ Shield final here preview. Wellington versus Northern Districts. Obviously, Jess Kerr's a massive factor for Wellington. Jess Kerr and Zara Jetley. Wonder what is. Respectfully, does Jess Kerr have a nickname as well? That is like semi-realistic for her real name, not just like a sporting
other than
nickname.
Jess.
Yeah, but is it
Because I'm guessing she's Jessica, but
yeah, but
yeah, I don't know.
like Izzy or
We might have to
something?
work on that. Yeah.
Is or yeah, I don't know. Maybe that
Slugger.
wasn't that type of thing sounded funny in my head. Jess Kerr and Zara Jetley have been Wellington's best players all summer across Super Smash and HBJ Shield. Let's not forget that Wellington Blaze, sorry. Oh, damn. The Wellington Blaze did win the Super Smash without Melie Kerr. So that's going to be useful. That was all about Jess Kerr. So that's the Kerr eras. We just saw Jess Kerr dominate a Super Smash final and drag her Blaze team to victory. A couple weeks later, Melie Kerr's announced as White Ferns captain. What more do you need to know about the Kerr era? Wellington also have Hannah Francis and Isla McKenzie are excellent youngsters. Other players like Seema Jess Simmons, you got the wicketkeeper Jess McFadden, big hitter Rebecca Burns, Georgia Plymmer's going to be there. Wellington are trying to do the double. And they're going to be, all the finals are played at the Basin Reserve. And Wellington loves the Blaze. To me, it's the best cricket team and community connection in Aotearoa. The Blaze always get monster crowds at the Basin Reserve in Wellington. Their community loves the Blaze. The Blaze love their community. And elimination final in the Ford Trophy final, they'll be played in Wellington. Obviously, the Wellington team's going to get the biggest crowd, but the fact that it is the Blaze is very interesting because the Blaze have an immense connection to their Wellington community, and they'll also be trying to do the double, Super Smash and HBJ Shield, so that's huge. Northern Districts, they have Nancy Patel on fire. She's got 350s in a row. 283 runs, averaging 31, strike rate of 104, as well as 13 wickets, averaging 21 in the HBJ Shield. Similar stuff in the Super Smash, although somehow Nancy Patel has a higher HBJ Shield strike rate than her Super Smash strike rate, which is pretty crazy. That shows how much she has been smashing it for Northern in the HBJ Shield. Caitlin Gurry and Jess Watkin are excellent domestic cricketers. Both, like you throw in Kate Anderson as well for Canterbury. Those players could be playing for the White Ferns, but I don't think they're going to be in the mix, especially as we start the Melie Kerr era. I think you're going to see the youngsters continue, and there are really good youngsters. Like Caitlin Gurry's an excellent domestic batter, but it's the youngster Emma McLeod from Central Districts who is the best HBJ Shield batter. So I have been thinking about, is there space for the older, mature players who are the best players in domestic cricket, some of, is there a way for them to stay in the White Ferns mix? Yes. If they are by far better than the youngsters, and I don't think they're by far better than the youngsters, like Emma McLeod, Izzy Sharp, Flora Devonshire, Georgia Plymmer, like those are all really good cricketers, and they should, as long as they're doing well, I think they deserve selection. In saying that, Jess Watkin and Caitlin Gurry are excellent domestic cricketers who will help Northern Districts perform well in the final against Wellington. That's the reason they're here, is because of those players. Nancy Patel's a bit younger, does have White Ferns potential. I talked a lot about it during the Super Smash ND's seam bowlers, Marama Downs, Kaylee Knight, Lucy Boucher, Sky Bowden. They're awesome. And we've also got Natasha Wakelin and Eve Walland, two young batters who, like, the best thing I can say about them is they hit sixes. I've seen both of them hit sixes in both competitions this summer, as well as just stacking up some runs. So awesome HBJ Shield final coming up on Saturday. Yep, Saturday the 21st. Shout out to Kate Anderson, who actually finished as the leading run scorer in HBJ Shield for Canterbury. Emma Black was the leading wicket taker. And Caitlin Gurry was second for runs. So here's the leading run scorers: Kate Anderson, Caitlin Gurry, Emma McLeod, Felicity Robertson, Maddie Green. All four of those five, except for McLeod, are mature cricketers. Older cricketers. So that puts into perspective what Emma McLeod's been able to do, but also like the older mature cricketers are scoring enough runs to be in the mix for the White Ferns. I just don't know if that will actually become the reality. I would love to see Northern Districts win. But given the theme of the podcast, I'd also love to see the Kerr sisters lead Wellington Blaze to another championship. Just feels like that would be the best way to start the Melie Kerr White Ferns era. But as I say that, I also love like watching Marama Downs bowl, Kaylee Knight bowl, and some of these Northern Districts cricketers go about their business. So I wouldn't mind seeing Northern Districts win. Hence, it's going to be a fun time watching the grand final. Let's get a bit of mindfulness.
Alrighty. Let me find my mindfulness.
As you do, I do respect your Gandalf Grey, your Gandalf White. The reason I kind of poo-pooed it down a bit, I think we can build out our specific fantasy novel, So yes, Melie Kerr become a Melie Kerr, sure. It fits Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White perfectly.
Well, it was also Melie Kerr becoming captain as well as
Yeah.
Probably more the significant change, but yeah, that as well.
You could point to any other Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, whatever other moments.
Strider becoming Aragorn, I guess.
Yeah, like whatever character of your favorite, not like anything else. But
I think Gollum.
I was trying to think of like Sopranos or something like that. Like AJ becoming a depressed teenager is the opposite of this.
Yeah, Walter White, Heisenberg, and
yeah. The moment Walter White kills someone for the first time or something, assuming he did, not top of the fresh mind. Oh, when the guy becomes Saul Goodman, and he's in the courthouse, and turns around, he's like, Saul Goodman. That's probably the one that I was looking for. But all that stuff's cool. We can waffle and ramble about it all we like, but we got to build out our own Aotearoa fantasy lore. So this is Melie Kerr become a Melie Kerr. This is a junction. This is a powerful transformation in the land of Aotearoa. I'm all here for it.
And on that note, I have a quote from Cormac McCarthy from his book, No Country for Old Men, which is not his best novel, but it is the best movie based on one of his novels. I have a feeling we'll probably take this in a different direction than what he meant it for, but that's fine. That's what the words are for. You don't know what worse luck your bad luck saved you from.
That's so true. That's so true. Because you can, something shitty might happen to you, but you never know that that shitty thing saved you from far worse things.
The better outcome, potentially. You just. I mean, that's the first three words of that quote is you don't know, right? It's not. You can't even say for sure that it did save you from something else. You don't know because it never happened. The other thing that might have been worse, might have been better. It never happened. You won't find out. But you're probably better off to have that perspective of it could have been worse. We'll work with what we've got rather than it should have been better. Why isn't it that? That's not really a path that's going to take you anywhere.
It also makes your bad luck some good luck.
It transforms what you had.
Because if your bad luck stopped you from worse luck, then it's good luck.
Yeah, it's actually beneficial, which means it's not bad luck at all. Exactly.
Beauty, I like it, but I don't like Rachin Ravindra needs some sort of luck, bad luck. Maybe this is his bad luck to save him from the worst luck as far as scoring runs goes, because the Blackcaps have now played 3 games at the T20 World Cup, and Rachin Ravindra is the only batter who has batted twice and he's got less than 20 runs. Jimmy Neesham scored 23 not out in 1 innings, and Rachin Ravindra's got 13 runs in 2 innings at 6.5 average. Great strike rate, 144, honkadori. But this is the biggest thing for me with the Blackcaps right now, is prior to the tournament where we're discussing Rachin Ravindra and his role in the team and his lack of T20 production in his career, but more specifically in the Super Smash leading up to this tournament. Because Rachin Ravindra, unlike Melie Kerr, he is not a dominant Super Smash cricketer. He hasn't been in his career, and he wasn't in his 3 games, which Wellington lost all 3 games before he went overseas with the Blackcaps. Now here we are, and the Blackcaps play against Canada tonight, Tuesday night. They should win that game, and maybe this is Rachin Ravindra's moment to get a bit of confidence, but based on what we've seen at the tournament, the funkiest thing for the Blackcaps is that Rachin Ravindra still hasn't scored any runs.
But you never know you don't know what worse luck your bad luck may have prevented you from. If Rachin Ravindra wasn't there, who would be batting there? It's probably too easy to take shots at Kane Williamson, who I actually think would have scored significantly more runs than that, given those opportunities that Ravindra's had. At a slower strike rate, though, and maybe in the bigger picture that
you could
makes a
flip.
difference.
You could flip his stats. So Ravindra averages 6.5 with a strike rate of 144. Williamson would have averaged 144 with a strike rate of 6.5.
There you go. Or alternatively, it might have been like a Tim Robinson or a Bevan Jacobs or someone like that in that position. And who's to say they would have done it? Like, they haven't played big tournaments before. Who's to say they might have toured India before at various like A levels or Blackcaps. I mean, Bevan Jacobs was there in India recently. I don't think he played.
Robinson was there as well.
Robinson was there as well at the start of that series, wasn't he? So they've got a little bit of experience playing there and thereabouts. But I don't know, would they have done better? We don't know. Just like the main character in No Country for Old Men. I don't know if that's who said that quote or not. And it didn't end very well for him. His worst luck came around in the end, that dude. But maybe Ravindra will score 100 against Canada, and then we don't have to worry.
But it is the biggest hole in the team right now.
Until he does, it is the biggest hole in the team.
He's bowling all right, though. He's bowled 5 overs, 2 wickets, gone at 8.4 RPO, which isn't terrible. And that does ease a bit of the pressure. Because if Jimmy Neesham's not taking wickets to the strike rate and efficiency that he has been, but he is scoring a few runs down the order, it balances things out. If Ravindra's not scoring runs, but he's taken a few wickets as a number 3 batter, it does balance things out. So it is useful that Ravindra, his bowling role is growing. He's bowled more overs than Glenn Phillips. He's been more economical than Glenn Phillips. So big up Rachin Ravindra, you the man. The other kind of funky hole we've got in this Blackcaps team is Jacob Duffy not quite being effective as he has been. 2 wickets, averaging 48, 12 RPO. Neesham's been more economical than Jacob Duffy, 9.1. And Matt Henry's doing far better than Jacob Duffy, even though it's only 1 wicket, but Matt Henry's averaging 34, 8.5 RPO, and Lockie Ferguson is on 4 wickets at 27 as the leading wicket taker. I don't know if we can just say like, we'll just tune things up against Canada because this is a World Cup. Anything's possible. You've got all, you've got the cricketing world here. You know, this is the biggest T20 tournament in the whole wide world. Let's just say that. Yes, the Blackcaps should beat Canada. Yes, this should be a slightly easier game, but it's a T20 World Cup where anything's possible, so I don't want to assume that Jacob Duffy is going to be tuning up and Rachin Ravindra is going to be having a glorified net session. That's not going to be the case. So I might actually twist it and say to beat Canada tonight, we need to see Jacob Duffy at his best. Probably, I mean, Seifert and Allen are just going to have a whack up top, so we might lose an early wicket. We need some runs from Rachin Ravindra. This is a good chance for them to get on the board and do some good stuff. At least Jacob Duffy has the history of being excellent as an all-format bowler, where Rachin Ravindra doesn't necessarily have the history of T20 batting behind him. And the only other kind of funky thing here for the Blackcaps, which isn't that funky, Mitchell Santner's only got 1 wicket, but he is our most economical bowler. He's the only Blackcaps bowler below 8 RPO. He's on 6.5 and 1 wicket in 12 overs. Matt Henry's also bowled 12 overs, so they've been the most active bowlers for New Zealand, and I think someone is off to have a baby.
Lockie.
So Lockie Ferguson won't be playing this game, which is all good. So it's just more important for Jacob Duffy, right? Like, this is a T20 World Cup pool game against Canada is a massive game for Jacob Duffy.
Yeah, well, I mean, because the other implication of what you're saying is that of this being an important game, of this being like, it's a big tournament. It's like they should win, but they're going to have to play good cricket to win, and we expect them to do that. But like, if you don't, even a team like Canada can beat you in the T20 format at a major tournament in this type of situation. Meaning that if Ravindra does smash a quick 550, and if Jacob Duffy does take 3 or 4 wickets, the other angle of that is you can't just be like, yeah, but it was only against Canada. It was the least important game, but it's a tournament, so they're all important games. And if they score those runs, if they take those wickets, like that actually, those actually would be very significant contributions, and they would be the type of knocks and contributions where you can say, sure, they've regathered a little bit of their touch. They've found a bit of that form again. It's not just like, can't just write it off because of the assumed stature of the opponents in this type of situation. Because I mean, the Blackcaps they did pretty well to beat Afghanistan. They thanks to Finn Allen and Tim Seifert, they like smashed their way to a very solid victory against UAE as well. But they lost to South Africa. If they lose another game, like, even though this game should be like a 99 times out of 100 they win this, well, if it's that other time out of 100 and you lose, that might be the end of your tournament. You know, they've already lost a lifeline by losing to South Africa. They can't afford anything less than a very strong bounce back, regardless of who they're playing. And yeah, the absence of Lockie Ferguson, who maybe is the one guy in that team where I might have thought perhaps they might have rested him for this game anyway, just because he is the injury-prone guy within their team and you don't want to overwork him. Other than that, I don't see a lot of rotation going on. I think they're going to pick their strongest team, and then either, I don't know, East Sodi or Cole Jamieson or someone comes in place of Ferguson. Yeah, that does put extra responsibility upon Jacob Duffy, who has to get back to being that guy working alongside Matt Henry rather than Matt Henry kind of doing the job for the both of them. So, should win, but also, it's still a very important game with a few different sneaky little angles and some things that we do need to see from the Blackcaps in this game.
Ben Sears won't be coming into the team because he's still a travelling reserve, and Cole McConchie has joined the proper squad.
Oh.
Which I think that makes sense considering the player who dropped out of the squad was a spinning all-rounder. So they've gone with Cole McConchie, a reliable spinning all-rounder who's probably a better spinner in T20s right now based on what he did in the Super Smash. And that means Cole McConchie probably won't be playing the Ford Trophy final on Sunday. Maybe Lockie Ferguson's got to come back to have... obviously, he's not having the baby. Big respect to all the baby mamas out there. Maybe Cole McConchie, just get back to Aotearoa, win the Ford Trophy, boost it over back to the T20 World Cup, because Canterbury are locked in for the Ford Trophy final on Sunday, obviously at the Basin Reserve. And CD, Central Districts, are locked into the elimination final. So Canterbury finished first, CD finished second, and we've got basically, I think it's between Wellington and ND for the last spot, so you might get Wellington playing a home game there. And we've got 4 trophy games being played today and tomorrow. There's 2 games today, 1 game tomorrow. I do see that there is a 17-year-old Hugo Bogue opening the batting for Otago. He scored 8 runs, got out. But, I mean, we've seen a few 17, 18, 19-year-olds doing pretty well in domestic cricket around Aotearoa, because Northern Districts had Sneha Reddy, Xavier Bell. I think Mason Clark debuted last summer as a 17-year-old, so he's probably 18 years old now, if my math is correct there. So a lot of excellent cricketers, young cricketers around Aotearoa. But yes, so the Ford Trophy final, is there any type of nugget I can offer there? Canterbury. I did write about Canterbury in our newsletter via Substack, thenishcase.substack.com, because I think they destroyed Otago in the most recent, they rolled Wellington for 68. And that was from their seamers. Michael Ray took 5 for, Mackenzie took a few, Fraser Sheet took a few. That's their seam attack with Lachlan Harper in the mix as well. So Lachlan Harper Super Smash debut, and that's a pretty cool seam attack that I like for Canterbury. And it's all 4 of those dudes are playing this game against Central Districts today with Araunak Kapoor in Offie. He's in the team. He's been playing the last few games for Canterbury, played in the Super Smash, and he's their chief spinner at the moment. So and obviously Canterbury's batting unit speaks for itself. Chad Bowes, Henry Nichols, Tom Latham, Reece Mariu, Matt Boyle, Mitch Hay. What more do you want there? That is one of the best batting units in domestic cricket right now. And of course, CD will be in the elimination final. And I don't expect many changes from the team they're rolling out today. Schmullian, Heafy, Young, Foxcroft, Cleaver, Clarkson, Shaw, Randall, Lennox, Tickner, Toole. Who's their 12th man? Toby Finlay. Aside from Curtis Heafy, he's on 38 not out as we speak. Hasn't had a great season to Curtis Heafy's lofty standards as a 21-year-old, 22-year-old batting freak. Blair Tickner's, he's always funky. Jaden Lennox is always funky. Obviously, Will Young, Blackcap as well. Josh Clarkson, excellent bowler right now, and he's scored some runs recently, so watch out for him. But the dude I want to single out is Dean Foxcroft, because I think Dean Foxcroft, I still think he's going to be playing for the Blackcaps over the next year or so. He's already played for the Blackcaps. But his skill set, like as far as the spinny all-rounders go, Dean Foxcroft is next behind Cole McConchie for me. They could go in a different direction, right? They could have, like, if you're just wanting a spinner, you'd go Jaden Lennox maybe. But if you're wanting the batter who's a really good spinner, not necessarily a dominant spinner this summer, but Dean Foxcroft is a very good all-round cricketer. He's scoring a lot of runs. He can do a job with the ball. I think he's going to be playing far more cricket for Aotearoa over the next year than he has been in the past couple of years since making his debut. And he's one of my players to watch out for in the elimination final, and hopefully for Central Districts' sake, the grand final as well. And who else is in the mix? Wellington ND. Both teams, a lot of funky stuff happening there. So I wouldn't be mad either way. Lots of youngsters, lots of elite talent as well for both of those teams. Just quickly, Breakers didn't make the finals.
Nope, eliminated with a game to spare, which is probably closer than it looked like they were going to get a few weeks ago. So, shout out to them for hanging on a little bit longer than they could have. It's just the same issues have remained pretty much throughout the whole thing, where like they can't win these close games where it starts to get into those fourth quarter position to position situations. They have actually gotten a bit better at it in sort of like the last month, but they lost so many games that way at the start of the season, and it's still like it's a long way from a strength. And in these last couple of games, right as it seemed like Kareem Lopez was reaching his absolute pinnacle, probably not a coincidence, he immediately picks up an undefined lower leg injury. And so he hasn't played for like the last 3 or 4 games. And obviously, I think it's very unlikely we see him again in the last game of the season or in the last game after the last game of the season when they play in the Ignite Cup final against Adelaide, which
that would be the biggest game.
Close ones to Adelaide.
But that's the biggest game of Kareem Lopez's career.
Yeah, and I do actually, like, there is a part of me that wonders if they might sneak him back, like, be able to convince him because it's a trophy on the line and whatever. Like, maybe you can, maybe. And also because, like, they're already down Sam Meninga. They're already down, I don't know if Rob Baker will be back for that or not. I'm not sure the extent of his injury, but, like, that's a couple big men down, and that's tough stuff. I've been reading a little bit about Kareem Lopez's trade because it's just weird to see. It's an interesting little experiment to see how American draft scouts speak about the Australian NBL. And like I was watching one, which led me into a different revelation. Well, not revelation, but just an interesting little anecdote here. But I was watching a thing that Sam Vecini did, and it was like a video of one of Kareem Lopez's games, and he's breaking down all the different, like, position by position, all the different little intricacies of what he's doing. And he started off talking about how he's a good athletic defender and he can make plays, but he's not necessarily a good defender, certainly not by like NBA level things, which I think is extremely normal of basically every player at that age trying to get into the NBA. I don't think that's at all, like, it's probably the thing that you scale up on the quickest once you hit the big league. But I just found it really funny how he was going through, like, well, Lopez is like starting off a play. It has happened a couple of times. He's like, Lopez has missed this guy. It's an open 3-pointer on the top because he's cycled across and to the help defender's gone. And then he he like goes back and replays it. And then he starts changing his mind. He's like, you know what? This is actually more of a coaching issue. They've left they've told this Max Darling is on this guy and he's 6 inches taller than him. So Ruben Tarangi's come across to help him but Ruben Tarangi shouldn't have been the helper because that means they've left the guy open at the top of the key for a 3-pointer. Should have been the guy on the weak side who comes across. And he sort of went from explaining how Kareem Lopez is an inexperienced defender, which is all true, but then sort of pivoted it around as he was replaying the scenes to being like, actually, this might just be bad coaching, which, yeah, okay, I can. We've had some complaints about the coaching of the Breakers this season, so it's interesting to see the experts come at that independently. But yeah, they've hung around a bit. You could say similar things about them last year, and that was one of the things that Dylan Boucher said about why he was perfectly happy to keep Coach Koppinen around for the second season of his 2-year contract, was that he saw a team, even when they were losing a lot, that was fighting for their coach, that was fighting for their their franchise and their teammates and all this. And I don't think we're lacking that this season. It's just that the expectations were higher than like honorable defeats, and the expectations were higher, but the results haven't actually gotten really a whole lot better. So they're still fighting for their team, they're still fighting for their coach, but they're also still not winning enough games. And that has been a common denominator, not only throughout Koppinen's tenure, but if we're going to be fair about it, I mean, arguably throughout Parker Jackson Cartwright's tenure as well. Joined the season after they made the finals, and they've really only had, I think, one play-in win since then and missed the playoffs entirely in the other couple seasons that he's been there. So, yeah, great player, but he's not winning a lot of games. He's not leading the team to victory, and he is the point guard who's supposed to be in charge in these fourth quarters where they don't seem to be able to get over the line. So if you've got a point guard who isn't bringing out the best in the guys around him when it matters most, if you've got a coach who's not calling up the right plays and getting the team in the best possible sort of defensive schemes and all this, you probably are going to finish 7th or 8th in the NBL. You know, that's probably about where you should be.
The Ignite Cup final is on Sunday on the Gold Coast, so that will be one of the greatest moments of New Zealand Breakers history. If they're just participating in the Ignite Cup is enough for a legendary moment. So I'm sure we'll all be closely tuned into that one. We're all closely tuned in to NRL preseason footy, where the Warriors lost to the Sea Eagles. If you're interested in preseason results. And this week they play the Dolphins on Friday. It's a Friday night banger, but not at Mount Smart. This one's in Sydney at Leichhardt Oval. 8 p.m. kickoff there. I talked about the youngsters on a YouTube video, but the broader, bigger idea for the Warriors is how their attack develops. So I don't know if we saw any signs of progression against the Sea Eagles. And then I was watching that Māoris team look far more threatening when Keanu Kinney was not at fullback and Shans Nickel-Klukstar was at fullback. Kind of felt like the Māori All-Stars could have won that game if Keanu Kinney was on the field at fullback, and I think this is aligned with the Warriors because the Warriors don't have Keanu Kinney, but they do have Taine Tuaupiki, who's like maybe half as good as Keanu Kinney, but he has the same skill set. He's fast, he's quick, he's got some zip, and we've talked about the lack of zip for the Warriors for a couple of years now. Fair play, they have brought in players to help develop a bit more speed. Aaron Clark, Luke Metcalf, Alofiana Khan-Pereira, and sometimes when Taine Tuaupiki is at fullback, this is a fast team. Like, you could have a Warriors team this year with Tuaupiki, Metcalf, Aaron Clark as a fast forward, and Khan-Pereira on the wing. But ultimately, depending on if Tuaupiki's injured, Metcalf's going to be injured. I don't see Andrew Webster selecting Khan-Pereira ahead of Watene Zelezniak or Tuivasa Sheck. So that means of your 4 players who are relatively fast for their positions, 3 of them might not be playing round 1. And Aaron Clark's the only dude playing round 1 in a position where your relative speed matters the least, right? Like, being a fast middle forward is a little less important than a fast winger or a fast fullback or a fast halfback. Those are positions where your speed is better suited, but when we're talking about the speed of a team, Aaron Clark is a fast forward, but the speed is important because there's just not much else happening, you know? If you don't have a lot else happening, then you need the speed to create some things. You'd know this to some extent with the Dragons. Like, the Dragons can... Well, I don't know if this is going to be the case this season, but they can do a shift to get Terrell Sloan one-on-one where he can burn the dude on the outside. In an ideal situation. They don't need to do much complicated there, right? Just a couple of decoys, get Sloan on the outside, he's going to do something. The Warriors don't have that luxury because Watene Zelezniak and Roger Tuivasa Sheck are not fast as wingers, 4 wingers. To be honest, they're kind of slow wingers. But the issue with the Sea Eagles loss, like it's preseason, so I'm not going too hundies. But again, with same with Rachin Ravindra and the stuff we're talking about, Jacob Duffy, and even what you're saying about the breakers and themes or patterns that have been in place for a couple of seasons, we've seen the Warriors kind of be mediocre in attack, aside from moments of brilliance. It was one game of preseason, but it was a similar vibe where you just didn't really feel like Aotearoa scored a couple tries off random things. And yes, you can put yourself in the right position. You can be hungry. You can do things to increase your chances of getting the ball off random situations, offloads and stuff like that. But I don't necessarily feel like they have designed a playing style that's going to score points. As far as funky attacking shapes, crisp execution, and how they move the ball to space. I think we saw a lot of the same limitations in that one preseason game. The counter was what we saw from Fisher Harris in the Māori game, where he showed his full baggie of tricks as a distribution point for the Māoris. So if the Warriors have Fisher Harris and Aaron Clark capable of passing the footy, as well as like a Vaimonga with his skill set, maybe a Tanistao Smith with his skill set as well, maybe you can do some more things as far as moving the footy goes with, because if like Mitchell Barnett's a good passer, Fisher Harris is a good passer, Clark's a good passer. So if you're three middle forwards in a top 17, first 17, if those three forwards can all pass pretty well, opportunities arise because of how you can shift the footy. So, and I think that's one of the skill sets that we've seen, well, that has been stacked up under Andrew Webster. We've seen the wrestling be stacked up season after season. Andrew Webster wants players who can pass the ball in both directions. So, those are things like when you have those things as well as a high completion rate and low penalty count, like those are really good foundations. What I'm trying to talk myself to is the foundations have been laid. So what are we putting on top of that this season? Didn't see much against the Sea Eagles to suggest something will be added this season, but again, like Fish Harris, Jacob Laban, they weren't playing. And Shans Nickel-Clockstar was playing for the Māoris. He wasn't playing in the NRL team. I'd rather have Shans Nickel-Clockstar at centre. That's his best position for the Warriors. But that's only possible if Taine Tuaupiki is playing. And if Taine Tuaupiki is not playing, Nickel-Clockstar will be the fullback, and there's not much zip there. And if that's happening while Luke Metcalf's not playing, there's no zip there. So that's just a little glimpse into my Warriors noggin where I just don't know if we're going to see any kind of funky additions to some really good foundations that have been laid so far under Andrew Webster. But like he was in charge of the Panthers attack as an assistant coach. I've seen him do some cool attacking things like the early shift to it's cool until the ball gets to Kurt Capewell on the wing, right? It's like an early shift to the second rower who is not fast, who's very slow. So they're doing an early shift to get forward the ball on the wing. To me, that's not a play for a line break. That's a play to move the defense around. And as I'm explaining this, there's a lot of things happening to move the defense around that I don't actually think leads to scoring points. Because moving defenses around, which is literally everything the Warriors do. They don't shift the footy to get the ball to speed in space. They shift the footy to move the defence, to stretch the defence. That creates holes in the middle where Wade Egan can get busy, where the short passing can happen, where guys are attacking spaces, but like those are things for bad defensive teams. Because good defensive teams just keep working on the inside. They keep plugging the holes. Which is why we've seen the Warriors struggle against good teams, because they don't actually do anything to break them down. Now it's all starting to make sense for me.
Well, they haven't really signed anyone else, to sort of, add a different skill set into there, other than, I guess, Cam Pereira, who, as you've detailed there, maybe isn't even like a first choice player necessarily. Is there, like, have they signed anyone else? Am I just forgetting? Or it's more or less the same team as last year, isn't it? With its, strengths and limitations and whatnot.
Yeah, they signed Hazen Mellors, but he's behind Cam Pereira on the wing.
Yeah.
They signed Morgan Gannon. To me, he's not as good as Jacob Laban. So those, like, the players they signed were depth players, which I don't mind, because those are useful depth players at a point where all the other depth players are youngsters. So you've got some, like Mellors is a youngster, but Gannon and Cam Pereira are a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, whereas all the other depth players are youngsters rising up through the pipeline. So it's a bit like the Phoenix, right? The players the Phoenix signed, they're a little bit older. Your mate Najarine, those type of characters, where they might not be the best players for the Phoenix, but they are older, more reliable, experienced players for a team that develops youngsters through their system. So, no, they didn't actually, like Cam Pereira is the main one. He might be the best winger there, aside from Tuivasa Sheck. And I think a lot of people, they would be selecting Cam Pereira ahead of Waitanei Zelezniak. In the same way of, like Andrew Webster's told us through his actions, not words, through his actions, he's not going to be starting Tuivasa Sheck at fullback if Nickel Clockstar is available, if Taine Tuaupiki is available. That's what we have learned from watching Andrew Webster. I don't think Andrew Webster will be dropping Waitanei Zelezniak for round one just to get Cam Pereira in the team. That doesn't sound like what Andrew Webster does. So I don't know if they've signed depth players. They haven't signed players who are going to change the dynamic of the team. But to counter that, as I think about it, Aaron Clark keeps getting better, right? There's ways for them to add a new dynamic to the team if players keep improving, if Metcalf's healthy, if Tuaupiki's healthy, maybe they offload more, maybe their passing is more crisp. Maybe the shapes we saw against the Sea Eagles are nothing of what they're going to do in the NRL team because they've got some tricks.
Yeah, and it seemed like that. I mean, like Halasima, Vaimonga, guys like that, Leatawa, like you can pretty comfortably expect those guys will make at least some steps forward. And, they've got another year under their belts, they're another year more experience. They kind of all had breakout years in the last two seasons, etc. There's more. I only named three guys there. There's several more we can say that about. Let alone like a title-winning reserve grade team from last season. I'm sure has a few more fellas who can offer something if and when the time comes around. And that's I suspect the vision with Cam Pereira as well, where it's like you don't actually have to rush someone like that. He's probably not on a level where you need to rush him straight into the first 13. He's not necessarily someone who you are gonna like change things up for, but he is someone who I suspect, I don't know if Tanner Boyd's the best example, but you know how Tanner Boyd just went and, signed for the team, NRL experience from the Titans as well, sit in reserve grade, play pretty well there, settle into the club, settle into like the, living in a different country, which is a factor when you sign players from Australia. And then a month or two into the season, in his case, a little bit later, it was when Metcalf gets injured, but perhaps Pereira would be on a little bit of a faster track. Week 5, week 6, week 7, maybe around that time, you start to see him. The first time someone gets injured or he comes in, then he takes his chance. Then he's been sort of, and then he stays in the team the rest of the season, that kind of thing. That could pretty easily happen. Like that's, I kind of expect that will happen. But yeah, in lieu of having signed any kind of star players or anything like that, or any kind of difference makers that change the picture of what we saw from them last season, I guess it is a matter of just like little evolutions rather than anything else, where there are a lot of young players. They should be better for whatever they went through last season as well, whatever they've been through the last 2, 3, 4 seasons. And I guess that is if we're looking for the Warriors to make a jump from being like a top 8 team to pushing to becoming like a top 4 team, that's probably where it needs to come from, is the very good young players that they have in their team just jumping up to another level.
I don't know if the small improvements is going to be good enough, though. That's kind of my point.
That's the worry, yeah.
Yeah. The foundations have been laid, and now I want to see, like, what are they going to do? I don't necessarily think the Warriors can win the championship, but what I'm looking for is, like, what are the Warriors going to do to win the championship? Because high completion rates, like the solid foundations they've got, isn't winning a championship. The balance is that high completion rates and the foundations they have does put you in the top 8 consistently, which is a very good spot to be in for a team that has always struggled to play finals footy. The team I want to spotlight from the preseason stuff, and it's more just the organization, because the Panthers have a very funky group of Kiwi-NRL players. We saw it in their loss against the Cowboys. Patrick Moimoi at centre, Mangari's Jr., Toby Crosby starting prop, he's from Greytown. Keilani Going starting edge forward, he's from Mid-Northern Rugby up north. And Hami Loza coming off the bench. I love Hami Loza. He's one of my favourite Kiwi-NRL juniors. Shout out to Jackson Stewart from Christchurch. He had a good showing on the wing for the Roosters as well. No Tom Ale. And of course, their big dogs, Isaiah Papali'i, Moses Leota, Scott Sorensen. They're all factors as well. That's it. Very funky group. Well, I don't know much about the Panthers New South Wales Cup team, but I imagine all 4 of these dudes who played the preseason game versus Cowboys, I think they'll be starting in New South Wales Cup. Maybe Keilani Going, maybe Tom Ale. I don't know if he's injured or not. But what I'm saying is that Hami Loza could be playing New South Wales Cup for the Panthers instead of under-21s. He might start the season in under-21s for the Panthers as a playmaker, but based on what I saw in an NRL preseason game, he might be in the mix to get a bit of New South Wales Cup footy early next season, and the other 3 will definitely be playing New South Wales Cup. Patrick Moimoi at centre, maybe edge forward, but probably at centre because he looked good at centre in the NRL preseason, and then Toby Crosby and Keilani Going. The Panthers SG Ball team. I don't know if Kaya Cribb was playing this week. No, he wasn't playing this week, but he was a starting centre, I believe, in round 1 of SG Ball. He's from the Waikato. And yeah, he was starting centre in that game. They've got Compton Purcell probably preparing to play under 21s. And that fits into the theme of the Panthers increasing their Kiwi-NRL recruitment, not necessarily recruiting juniors from Aotearoa, because they just jump on the back of other teams' scouting and development. So all the Kiwi-NRL players they've got right now, they've signed from other NRL systems. Compton Purcell from the Warriors, obviously Patrick Moimoi, Toby Crosby, Kailani going, Tom Ale from the Warriors as well, Hami Loza from the Knights, Kaya Cribb was up in Queensland. I think he went to Palm Beach, Currumbin after leaving the Waikato. So that's how the Panthers have built out their Kiwi-NRL stocks, and they've gone from from having not many Kiwi-NRL juniors in their system to having a pretty funky group. And as I keep saying, they're doing it with the woman as well. Tasha Gale Cup. This week they had a big win over the Rabbitohs. They've got Melina Lavea. She is an edge forward in their team. She's from Auckland. Tayali Raihi. She was on the bench and she is from the Waikato. And Danica Talitonu. She is from Christchurch, I believe. I keep learning about the wahine from Aotearoa in NRLW systems, but the Panthers don't have an NRLW team. So there's no NRLW system. And yet the Panthers are still recruiting players from Aotearoa, specifically women, to work through their pipeline. Obviously, maybe the Panthers have the intention of getting an NRLW team, but regardless, this tells me that they are well and truly aware of Aotearoa's production line, because they've got more Kiwi NRL juniors in their men's pipeline, and without an NRLW team, they are recruiting under 19 women from Aotearoa, from the regions as well. From the Waikato, from Christchurch, and of course from Auckland. So really tapped in with what the Panthers are up to as far as their Aotearoa flavour. And specifically, if I'm to highlight one player, it's all about Hami Loza. Love what I see from Hami Loza. Have done for a couple of years with the Knights. Now he's in the Panthers system, and he just keeps impressing as part of a wave of Aotearoa spine players like Ryder Crosswell scored a try for the Knights in the halves. He's from Dannyverk. Bronson Rubens in the Bulldogs system. He's from Kaiapoi. You got the fullbacks, your Mason Barbers, your Te Huranui Twiddles. We got some spine players, don't worry about that. Let's get into our football session where the Wellington Phoenix women had a loss, the men had a win, and Auckland FC are playing...
a draw.
Oh, sorry.
It felt like a win in the second half, but it didn't. It was weird.
Yeah, so the Phoenix men had a draw. Auckland FC are playing tonight against Sydney FC, 9 p.m. And we've finally got another derby coming up on Saturday. When I checked this about 20 minutes ago, I just got a whole talk about going from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. We got a derby coming up this weekend. You know, that's how impactful this fixture is for me, and I imagine a lot of Kiwis. It's just like a dose of excitement right there for you. We got derby football coming up this weekend in Wellington, and not at Porirua Park. Not at Jerry Collins Stadium. It will be at the Caketon, aka Matt Henry Stadium, the land of Henry. The biggest thing, though, that I want to set us up here with is yes or no question. I don't want any. This is always a bit tricky for you. Just I want nothing else. Just yes or no. I'll take a maybe. Was this the best available match day squad for the Wellington Phoenix women? Was this a full strength Wellington Phoenix women's squad that played on Sunday?
No.
Okay, who was not available?
Well, do you want the season-ending injuries as well as the ones for this one day, or?
But like, okay, take out Samba, and like
take out CJ Bott, take out Tissel Medag, take out Alistair Wynnum. They've been taken out for the rest of the season anyway, but Grace Jolly didn't play this game either.
Yeah, okay. Good stuff. You corrected me there, because I was thinking it's a pretty good squad, but it wasn't their best team. Obviously, if you inject like Grace Jolly, if she was available, she didn't be in there, so it's not the best team. But it felt like a good squad, pretty close to the best squad they've had available without taking into account season-ending injuries. But the team didn't reflect that level of squad. And I thought that because for some reason Bev Priestman decided to change everything. And like, yeah, sure, Grace Jarley's not playing, but why did that mean that Daisy Brazendale's coming in? When Emma Pinenberg, to me, is a better player than Daisy Brazendale. Like, there was a lot of change in roles, and I'm not sure, like, usually we've seen Lara Wall and Mania Elliott share game time fairly equally. I don't think that happened against Central Coast, because it was mostly Mania Elliott.
Yeah, Lara Wall only came on for like the last 5 or 10 minutes or something.
And Pia Vlock, now she's back. She's playing deeper in the midfield. Lucia Leon is playing a different role. We've got the Big Mac, the Double Macca, the Macca Stacker, Michaela Woods and Mackenzie Anthony as strikers together. None of which felt like the best Wellington Phoenix women's team possible. Let me reframe it to that. Like, okay, you've got a really good squad, but the team was not the best team possible. Because the players were playing in different positions, and there were some weird selections, and I'm sure Bev Priestman had reasons and logic. Like, those selections didn't really inform me that they were really desperate to win that game. Because those moves weren't necessarily, like, I don't really think about those moves as winning moves. Yes, the conditions were pretty rough. It was windy. It was like crazy conditions at Jerry Collins Stadium in Porirua. The conditions played a role. But it's hard to win games if you're not selecting your best team that is available. Did you feel like that was the best team available?
Well, no, and that I was thinking very similar things to what you've said there, which is interesting alignment. Because obviously, like, Grace Jarley had a head knock or something from, I think they said from last week's game, maybe even, or at least during the weekend training or something. And so it wasn't bad, but they decided to keep her out as a precaution for this game. You've won 4 games in a row, you can do that sort of stuff, right? Unfortunately, they massively missed her because she is a big physical presence in the midfield, and I think more to the point than her physical presence, because she's not always used her physical presence when she's played as a striker, but when she's been in midfield, she's been pretty good at hunting down the ball and getting stuck into challenges, that kind of stuff, and having a fantastic season. Earned a recall into the Football Ferns. But I think the thing she does the best is the way she just sprays those long passes. She's not a great short passer. I think maybe that's something that'll build up as she plays more in those areas, although maybe not under Bev Priestman. I'll come back to that idea, the way she uses her midfield when we start talking about Pia Vlock and Daisy Brazendale. But Grace Jarley's ability to just hit those switches and like get the ball to Brooke Nunn, especially out on the right wing, from situations where maybe it's cramped in the midfield, she's able to just like find the space, pretty accurate, getting out there, getting the ball where where it needs to go, where the team can build an attack off the back of that. There was a lot. I know that would have been very difficult in the windy conditions that they were playing in, but like there was so much, especially in the second half, while they're trying to get back into the game 2-1 down, playing playing with the breeze at that point, I think, more or less. And it's like the amount of impatience that was there from players just wanting to shoot from distance or go long straight down the middle or whatever, is not having like a midfielder who can hold off a player and then just like whip it out to the winger would stretch the field, get the ball from one side to the other side. They weren't doing a lot of that. It was just running up the same channels, and it was even like it was mentioned on the commentary how they were just going up the wing. Ball gets like lobbed up, defender heads it out for a throw in, start again, do the same thing. So you got to be able to get the ball to the other side where the space is if they're overloaded on this side. Like just not having someone with that kind of range there was a big miss. And Grace Charlie, just the way she's played this season, was going to be a big miss anyway. It just so happened that the conditions meant that, and the opponent they were up against meant that her loss was noticed even more in this particular matchup. I really kind of, I don't know if it was overcompensating for the fact that Jale wasn't there or what it was, but it just did seem like Bev Priestman got a little bit too chiefy with overthinking how to build the team without Grace Jarley in there. And we've seen this before when they lost CJ Bott. The first two games after CJ Bott got injured were a 2-2 draw away to Brisbane and a 2-1 loss to Melbourne City. Up until this game on the weekend, 2-1 loss to Central Coast at home, those were the only two instances in which they've conceded multiple goals in a game. Came immediately after CJ Bott was no longer in that midfield, and it just, took a couple of games to maybe recalibrate things and sort of, build out that identity again in a CJ Bott less Wellington Phoenix side. We might have seen something similar there in how they sort of responded to not having Grace Jale there. But I'd imagine that's why Daisy Brazingdale comes in, is because even though she clearly needs to do a fair bit more work still on her passing game, doesn't really have the short passing or the long passing, but she is an extremely, she's a very hardworking midfielder, and she's really she's rough, she's physical, she gets stuck in. So I'd imagine that's why she comes in with the absence of Jale. It's like, well, let's get someone in there with a bit of bite. And Brazendale's been playing a lot this season. She's been coming off the bench in pretty much every game. I think this was only her second start, but she's been in and around the team throughout. Earning her opportunities, and was probably with another start with someone else going down. She was the next one up. Where it gets tricky is we then go like, oh well, then maybe we don't pick Emma Pynenberg, maybe we move Pia Vlock back, and then it's like, well, Pynenberg is your best passer, and you're picking someone who doesn't have a great sort of passing game in that area, and you're getting rid of your best sort of link player. And then you're bringing back Pia Vlock, which means that Pia Vlock is further away from the goal and isn't able to do the things that she's so good at, which is creating chances. I know she can do the role in the midfield. She played quite well. I thought Brazendale played quite well in the first half, especially as well. But it's a different combination. It's a different thing. And I don't know, it's another little chapter as well in how Bev Priestman seems to view the midfield, where most coaches, it seems like that's the most important part of this. That's the engine room. You want your hardest workers, sure. That's no different with Priestman, but you also want a sort of level of distribution there. And she's just gone and let's put Grace Jale there as a converted. Well, Jale's played a bit of midfield before and probably should have been a midfield the whole way through. It now seems quite obvious that this is her best position, but she hadn't been playing there beforehand. CJ Bott, a fullback, moving her into midfield. That was much more sort of once the revolutionary, but that was an out of the box decision to do that. Either of them really great passes. So it's interesting that she's done that, and elevating Brazendale and bringing Pia Vlock deeper, and maybe not playing Emma Pynenberg as much as she could have played Emma Pynenberg. It just seems like Priestman doesn't really care about that skill set, particularly in those positions, which is interesting because I think basically every other A-League coach does. But what she does care about is having a sort of, being able to win the ball in those positions and being able to push forward and just get get the ball somewhere in an area forward ahead of you, and then you've got fast players and hard workers who can run onto it and things like that. So it's a different identity. It's not a better or a worse thing. It's just an interesting, like, this is an element of how this team plays, which is quite different to how they've played sort of beforehand when they've tried to be a bit more of a position-based team. And if that's the case, you need someone like Anale Longa who's really good on the ball, who can move it around like that. Bit different under this coach.
Selecting your best players is more important. And Grace Jale, CJ Bott, you're talking about their history and everything like that. At the Wellington Phoenix, under Bev Priestman, they're your two best midfielders. Emma Pynenberg, this is all my opinion, she's your third best midfielder. She wasn't starting. So if your two best midfielders are out, your third best midfielder should be playing and starting.
I agree.
And that didn't happen. If you got a young phenom, and this is where I think maybe she was just managing her squad. Maybe she was managing the season. Maybe she saw the forecast and she could predict these things and she was like, nah, the game's going to be a shitter, so let's just switch things up. I don't know. But if you got a young phenom, just keep her in her best position. And especially when you're missing those other pieces. And everything you were saying there is what I've talked about as to why some young players haven't been playing. Because it's clear that Bev Priestman values those traits and wants to build her team that way. But you also need your best players to be playing the most. You need your best batters facing the most deliveries, as you like to tell us. And I just find it weird that Pynenberg wasn't starting, considering you're missing your other two best midfielders. And then we had the double Macca thing happening up top, and I didn't like it. I don't really think...
Neither did I.
I love Michaela Woods. Michaela Woods, she's all good for me. I don't really like Mackenzie Anthony as a player. She is like... I think Michaela Woods is better. They're both, as you've said, they're both American football players. And for anyone who hasn't been paying attention for the last 100 years, women don't play American football. So that's why, America, land of the free. You can't. The only gridiron you can play as a woman was lingerie football.
Yeah, right.
Which is absolutely ridiculous. But now they've got flag football and all that stuff. Where in Aotearoa and other countries like Aotearoa, women are playing rugby. Women are playing rugby league. And Mackenzie Anthony, to me, is the epitome of an American football player. And by that, I mean a soccer player. She's bigger and more robust than most other players on the field. And that's how she plays her soccer football. I don't think she's as good at that as Michaela Woods. So I wouldn't be selecting her ahead of Michaela Woods, and I would not be selecting a soccer team, a football team, with two of those type of players as your strikers. Like, give me a little bit of subtlety, give me a little bit of flair, a little bit of pizzazz, a little bit of skill, and then we'll see how we go in that regard. So I didn't like the double Macca combo. Like, sure, it was cool. Their first names are both Macca. All we need is Craig McMillan and we'll be a trifecta of the Maccas, but...
Well, we got Mackenzie Barry.
Yep, Mackenzie. But she's a stalwart of the team. I don't want to put Mackenzie Barry into that class because Mackenzie Barry is an absolute legend for me, and she isn't a one-dimensional soccer football player. Where I think Mackenzie Anthony is a little bit one-dimensional. And if Mackenzie Anthony is one-dimensional, I'm open to the argument that Michaela Woods is one-dimensional as well. I just like what I've seen from Michaela Woods better than Anthony. But it's like, if you don't have your... Because Emma Pynenberg, as you said, her passing in the midfield is excellent. So you're taking that
That's
out
part
of
of her game. Yeah.
You're taking that out of the team. You're moving Pia Vlock deeper. So you're taking out your most potent, creative attacking player. And you're also rolling out two strikers who are pretty similar. No wonder they only scored one goal, right? Like you're taking a team that has very useful, creative attacking pieces, and then you're selecting a team that looks closer to what Bev Priestman would have worked in the on top of shit like Canada group. If you catch my drift there.
Yeah, it's too far down that tunnel for my liking, certainly, because like you've also got to complete the attacking trio. You've got Lucia Leon, who is a player I just can't really get a handle on whether I think she's good or not. Like she does some good things and she does some things where it's like I don't. That because there's two goals they've scored, both one from Michaela Woods and one from Mackenzie Anthony, because the goal on the weekend was the same, where it stems from Lucia Leon pressing really high, I think on the goalkeeper, and at least one of them, if not both of those, or it's pressuring the defenders as the goalkeeper's playing it out to them, and that's amazing. Like that fits perfectly with what they're trying to do. That is great hustle. That is great energy. And I also feel like long stretches of the game go by where I don't even know Lucia Leon's on the field. And she was signed to be a wide defender, but more, I guess a attacking fullback type wingback situation. But Brooke Nunn's been so good on that position that Lucia Leon's now playing as a central attacking player, which again, it's like another one where this is not in favor of flowing passing football. This is in favor of like battering ram football, which is what Priestman's trying to do. So fair play for the consistency of the message. But if you have Leon up there with Woods and Anthony, it's very, to use your phrase, like it's very one-dimensional. There's not a lot else going on. Where's the craft, right? There's none. There's no craft there. It's all about hustle and hard work, which is cool, but like that stuff works way better when the other team has the ball and you're trying to win it off of them. If you've got the ball and you're chasing the game and they're sitting back and you're 2-1 down and it's really windy and things are a little bit chaotic, you don't really have, there's no one in there who's going to like put their foot on the ball and get their head up and pick the right pass. By that point, Pannenberg was on the field, Emma Main was on the field, so it was a little bit different by then. But like, I don't know. So the big difference between Woods and Anthony is that Woods is fast, and because she's fast, she makes more things happen. I'm watching Mackenzie Anthony and being like, you're
she's big for
strong,
nothing.
You're tall.
She's big for nothing.
Yeah, like you're taller and stronger than Emma Main, but you're no faster than Emma Main. Your movement's not as good. Your finishing's probably not as good, although she did score a nice tap in, so fair play on that. I don't know. She scored like a goal a game when she was playing in Ireland. I don't know what the quality is in Ireland. I know it's certainly less than the A-League, but it's
but you can
suggest she can play higher than that.
You can, like it's the same way you can see how USA is good at football in different eras, and how Mackenzie Anthony might be good in different leagues. If you're bigger and stronger and faster than other players, you're going to do well in some different leagues. But like, again, Emma Main just has way more zip, and like instincts and intuition is a big thing as well, where I think let's weave in Elijah Just, like his movements that we're seeing with Motherwell are crazy.
Phenomenal stuff.
So he's moving into space. He's seeing where the space is going to be. Then he's moving into the space. Then he's receiving the ball. He's got a good touch. He's scoring goals, so he's got a good shot. Like everything there is just premium, pristine football. Not to compare, like not a direct comparison, but when I watch Mackenzie Anthony, she doesn't really have a good touch. She's not really getting into space. But she's bigger and stronger. So yes, I can see that like the Phoenix need those players, because they're like, the whole defense is that type of player, right? Like Walker, Van der Meers, and your Mackenzie Barry, the OG Macca. You need those players in your team. Michaela Woods. But there's a fine line between, like, that's the thing about all these sports. You need a crafty halfback in rugby league. You need your point guard in basketball. In cricket, you need your spinner. To the point, like, yes, you might not select a spinner, but your team's going to be better with a spinner in it for some reason. And it does seem a little bit one-dimensional for the Phoenix woman, but it's just one game, so we'll keep...
And it was a freaky game, and it was a game where they didn't have their best fit, even though she wasn't fit for this game, their best available midfielder too. So like there's a few factors there that bring it down. And maybe the weather was the reason that that Priestman decided, well, let's just put all the chaotic reactionary players up top. Because that's the difference, like what you're saying about Elijah Just, the word that pops to my head is like he's anticipating the game. He's a few steps ahead. He's orchestrating what's going to happen through his movement. He makes the run, the goal he scored on the weekend. He sees the ball half cleared to a midfielder, and he makes a little sort of he doesn't even run very far, but just a little drift off the shoulder to get from one gap between two defenders to a different gap between two other defenders. And he does it quick enough that they can't react before the ball's been played into him, and he's allowed to take a touch and score. That's playing ahead of the game. The big American striker type does not play ahead of the game. They just react to what's happening faster and stronger than other players, and sort of it's not anticipatory, it's reactionary. And maybe the weather was the reason that Priestman went all in on that. There is a little bit of worry because she's not American herself. She's from like Northern England, but because she had such a sort of her only other senior coaching job was the Canadian national team there. That is a North American thing, very closely linked to American styles. I wouldn't want to, like, Michaela Woods has been very good. Frustrating in the ways that those types of players are frustrating, as I talked about last week, but immensely effective and works so well within that team. I don't really think that team needs any more of that, though. She does that. You don't need another striker to do the same thing. And I don't think that the other strikers they have are even necessarily doing the same thing. I would way rather Pia Vlock be playing where Lucia Leon was. I would way rather Emma Main be playing where Mackenzie Anthony was. I have to keep making sure I don't say Mackenzie Arnold, the Australian goalkeeper. But and especially because, Pia Vlock's going to be in there one way or another because she's proven herself a first 11 player. But I thought Emma Main was playing pretty well through the earlier parts of the season as well. And if she loses her spot to a player who I don't actually think is any better, but just happens to have an import tag, I don't think that's really fair. I hope that doesn't happen. But we'll see down the line because this was a freaky instance game. It was not a normal game of football.
Leon is a weird player because you mentioned she was signed as like a wide defender. She's played like a secondary striker type of role. She's played in the midfield. I've got no idea what position she actually is. Like, just based on what I've seen at the Phoenix, I don't know I can't even say like what her best position is. I don't know what her role, like what kind of player she is. She's a good football player. Maybe it's just like you just want a good player in the mix. But I would rather have her in the midfield in that team. I'd rather have her next to Brazendale and just leave Pia Vlock in the more attacking zone. But that's not what we got. So I'll keep watch out for what Leon's best role is.
Probably the position she hasn't played yet is why we can't figure that out. Her best position is where she's not been picked.
The men. So we got the full Bill Tuiloma set piece
we did.
Extraordinaire game, and the Wellington Phoenix came back to draw that game 2-2 because of Bill Tuiloma and his... we didn't get a Bill Tuiloma free kick, but we got Bill Tuiloma just somehow been in the right spot, right time, physically doing his... He's coming out of the MLS where it is a very different style of football for the men compared to the women. But that was Bill Tuiloma dragging the Wellington Phoenix to a 2-2 draw with a couple of goals. As I said, we've got Auckland FC tonight against Sydney. You did have a couple notes about the goalkeeping situation in our newsletter, and I am going to double down. Like, to me, Eamon McCarron's the best goalkeeper at the Wellington Phoenix men's team, and I'm just going to die on that hill, I think. So shout out to Eamon McCarron. I'm your boy. I'm riding, and I'm not dying, but I'm riding with Eamon McCarron. So I just want to keep shouting that out. But let's get a bit of an early derby kind of vibration thing going on. Even though we've got Auckland FC tonight against Tuesday, from like an Auckland perspective, what are you looking for as far as coming up against the Wellington Phoenix for this game, but also moving forward? And of course, we've got Sarpreet Singh playing for the Wellington Phoenix. So let's start with the Wellington Phoenix. How are they going to win? First of all, how do they win a game? Because they haven't won in their last 4 games, 2 losses, 2 draws. So how do they win a game? But how does this Wellington Phoenix group, with Bill Tuiloma, with Sarpreet Singh, probably not with my boy McCarron, but that's all good, how do they beat Auckland FC?
I don't know, because if we sit here looking through the Wellington Phoenix stuff, it becomes difficult through past experience. Watch the last month and watch this full season, being like, well, maybe they could tighten up in this area or that area, yeah, but they haven't shown a lot of evidence to show that they will. I think the way that they can beat them is by is not so much about it. Well, first of all, they have to, like, this little roller coaster they've been on, this little merry-go-round where Bill Tuiloma 1 week makes a mistake that leads to a goal, next week it's Mandrake's fault, next week it's LB Kelly-Hield's fault, who, if I'm going to jump on a hill, this is not the time that most people would be doing that. I would put LB Kelly-Hield, I think, as the best goalkeeper of those 3. I think the reason for that is because I think he's not necessarily talent, though I think there's an argument there. And it's also, it's important in this job, right, to be able to stick to your guns at the time when perhaps he's just made a big mistake and people are looking at perhaps looking at him a bit critically. So that's the time when you got to stick to your opinions there and not fold. So I would have said this beforehand, and I'll say this again now. But I think he is the guy who suits their style the best. I think he's the guy who plays outside the box. He's by far the best passer of those 3.
Is that style like making mistakes?
Yeah, at the moment it is, but also the style of being able to play out from the back, and the guy who can get the ball to Bill Tuiloma so that he can start sparking things and whatnot. They did drop Mandrake James for that game as well. We'd sort of toyed up that possibility. How harsh would Chiefy be on an import player who's been one of his sort of defensive leaders? Well, harsh enough, because he dropped him, brought him on at halftime, and James played much better in that second half than he, that was his best game for a little while, even though he only played half of it. So I think they got the response they wanted there from one of their import veterans. That's good. Tuiloma not back in form, but able to at least show what he offers, which was always going to be this. That's the thing about Bill Tuiloma, is that you cannot expect flawless defensive, production every single week. He will make some mistakes sometimes. He's also just a tremendous passer, and even more than that, he is unbelievable at he's not even that tall for a defender. I don't think he's 6 foot. Be like 5'11" or something, but he hangs in the air and he jumps so high. He's unreal at winning those headers, and he was doing this against MLS players, so he's going to be doing against A-League players. We finally got to see how effective that can be. I guess the set pieces is going to be a pretty big issue, especially if Michael Vowd hasn't regained entire confidence himself. You want to swing those, you want to get those set piece deliveries aimed towards the back post, 6-yard box kind of depth, Bill Tuiloma hunting, as they did on the weekend. But as to how the Phoenix can win that game, I think they have to. It's probably less of a picture about the Phoenix themselves and more about the fact that for the first time heading into a derby, Auckland FC feel vulnerable as well. And that's never really been the case before. So I think that's the thing the Phoenix can hang their hat on. It's not so much that there's anything in how they've been playing that suggests they can turn up and beat a team that has beaten them five times in a row. But maybe this isn't that same team right now. There's a few wobbles there as well in terms of how Auckland have been playing, and they've not been very clinical. They've conceded some soft goals themselves. There's a few overlapping elements there at play. They have a few injuries that may or may, I think Nando Pinecker and Lachlan Brook are in the wider squad, but they'll probably have to prove their fitness throughout the week to see how they are on the weekend. Similar thing with, I think, Sarpreet Singh. It sounds like he just banged his knee against a dude in a challenge, which is why he got subbed off on the weekend. Probably should have been subbed off around that time anyway, because you don't want to bring a guy into a different environment and go straight away 90 minutes each time. You need him for this derby, but that is an element that they didn't have in the past. Bill Tuiloma is an element they haven't had in the past. Those guys haven't played derbies previously. There's not a lot of recent form for the Phoenix to say like they're heading towards a victory, but there are certainly things about how Auckland FC have been playing that suggest maybe they're not heading towards like the dominance that we've seen from them, even though some of those games have been close. The fact is they've always found a way to win those ones, but they've not been finding a way to win games of late to the same extent as they did last year or at the start of this year. So I think that's where the intrigue lies. Is this the first derby where it feels like both teams are out of form? And I don't know what that's going to look like, but I think that sounds like a pretty fun recipe for some wild and bonkers derby footy, hopefully.
What's the most basic weakness the Wellington Phoenix can exploit for Auckland FC? Like, what is I'm just going to ask the question in 5 different ways, but you can answer it.
Well, it depends on selections to some extent. Because if they are picking Guillermo Mai and Lachlan Brook and not Logan Rogerson, then you can hit them in transition a lot better than has been the case at other times. Like, they are a team you can counterattack, and the Phoenix have good counterattacking players. Not the least of which being Ifeanyi Eze, who is really good if you just kick the ball into an area and let him chase after it one-on-one. I think he is faster than Goodwood Reich, or Dan Hall would probably keep up with him. But still, like, that's a 50-50 battle, and the Phoenix will take that every time if they can get their striker in a 50-50.
Do you know, so Dan Hall, excellent defender, right? Like,
yeah,
even in all facets of defense, excellent, including one-on-one defense. I love Eze so much that when you were talking about that, I had visions of Eze just carving up Dan Hall.
Well, you can also do that a bit easier if he is more exposed, right? And it depends on if Pinecker or Goodwood Reich is available. I'm not sure, but neither of them are that fast, And that is they like to bomb their fullbacks forward, and they haven't been very good at creating the most out of their opportunities, and they have conceded a few goals recently where it's come about that way. And I don't know, we didn't see a lot from Sarpreet Singh on the weekend because he basically got kicked every time he got the ball, and I don't know if that's quite the same. Auckland FC don't kick you for the sake of kicking you. Maybe in a derby they will. I don't know. But they normally just they bowl you over because they win the ball and then bowl. Yeah, actually, I'm picturing Sam Cosgrove and then
they're going to do a lot of kicking. I can tell you that.
Yeah, they're very good at doing the win the ball and then leave you on the ground afterwards. Though it's not just like take you out and then concede the free kick. When they concede free kicks, it's a bit more of a I don't know. They're an imposing team, but if you can bypass Louis Verstraete, they're not as good in the getting back and around those kind of areas. But their biggest weakness is that they've not been putting away their chances, and so I think that's the thing the Phoenix can rely on about, is that maybe here's a team that won't punish their inevitable mistakes in the way that other teams perhaps have. Although actually you could say that game against Western Sydney had a bit of that as well. Costa Barbarossa's missed a big chance to go. I think it might have been 3-0 up at that stage. And they're talking about the game being over, and then up steps Bill Tuiloma a couple of times. Up jumps Bill Tuiloma a couple of times. So, there's there are a few more elements to this game than there have been in previous derbies, where it felt like maybe you can boil it down to a few more specifics. This one, because of the recent form of these teams, and also because of some of the transfers that they've made, it's like there's elements here that we haven't seen before in a derby.
Auckland FC haven't brought all whites to the club. They did to start, right? But since having De Vries and Nando Pinecker and Rogerson, they haven't brought back all whites to New Zealand. So at least the Wellington Phoenix, they have some sort of credibility where they can get Sarpreet Singh back, get Bill Tuiloma to Aotearoa. So that's a little positive there.
And also those guys weren't first choice all whites. And they had been, Pinecker maybe a bit more so, but Rogerson had only ever been in and out of the All Whites. He's kind of still in and out of the All Whites. Francis De Vries hadn't been back in the All Whites since his injury. They got back in there because of how they played for Auckland. They didn't sign them as established All Whites, as first 23 squad members, as Sarpreet Singh is, as Bill Tuiloma is, which the Phoenix had just done.
Obviously got to finish with a bit of goalkeeping though. Who is the best goalkeeper involved in this game for across either squad?
Well, the last time they played was at Mount Smart, and Joshua Iemi had the game of his life. If you remember that, when he saved 2 penalties, they still lost. They lost 3-1, but he made a ton of saves and was that's as well as he has played in a Phoenix jersey. So for this particular opponent, maybe it's him. I don't know if they'll try rush him back for this. I know he's close. That is going to be fascinating, because you can make a case for any of those 3 goalkeepers to start. And that's even when I laid through their stats and the thing, it was Oloiemi's the shot stopper, Kelly Heald's the passer, McCarron's the guy who does not as good at either of those things as those guys, but does both of them better than the other does for their other aspect. He's sort of the all-rounder. So you can make a case in any direction there. That is one of many selection issues that will be interesting for either team, for both teams.
Obviously, Michael Vout's the best goalkeeper. You forgot about him.
Yeah. I do like Michael Vout. I spent a lot of time defending him, but we'll see.
Well, he's better than the Phoenix goalkeepers, and I'll finish there. I won't even let anyone else bounce back at that, because Michael Vout, even though I love McCarron, I think Michael Vout is the best goalkeeper involved in this derby, and you're the best person involved in doing your best. Good stuff. That's the niche case for this week. Big up to everyone. Kia kaha, stay beautiful.